The coronation oath has stood for centuries and is enshrined in law. Are you willing to take the oath?
I am willing.
Well, after being anointed with holy oil and presented with the crown jewels, the Archbishop of Canterbury placed the 360-year-old crown on the monarch.
Thousands inside the Abbey and millions beyond watched the historic event unfold 70 years after the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. Prince William, the Prince of Wales and heir to the throne, knelt in front of his father, reading an oath of loyalty before the Pledge of Allegiance was read by thousands in attendance.
I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, as your liege man of life and limb. So help me God.
I swear that I will pay true allegiance to your majesty and to your heirs and successors according to law. So help me God.
Well, Michelle Rimmer is in London for us and has been watching the proceedings. Michelle, there really is no overselling the point that this was an historic event. Take us through some of the key moments of the day.
Well, from the weird and wonderful to the outright bizarre, this was 5 hours of royal tradition that Britain hasn't seen for 70 years. Now, the day kicked off with King Charles and Queen Camilla leaving Buckingham Palace in the Golden State coach, which was built in Australia. They travelled along a procession route to Westminster Abbey. Now, when they arrived at Westminster Abbey, King Charles walked into the Abbey with his grandson, Prince George, in tow. He was one of 4 page boys that held on to King Charles's train as he made his way down the central aisle of Westminster Abbey. When they arrived at the front, there were a number of ceremonial offerings. There was an orb, a sceptre. There were all kind of ceremonial moments, but perhaps the most symbolic ceremonial moment was when King Charles was covered by a screen. He was hidden from public view, and that is where he was anointed with oil. After that, he was crowned officially King Charles, the Britain's monarch. After that, it was Camilla's turn, and she also made an oath, and she was crowned Queen Camilla. Now, up until this point, she's been known as the Queen Consort. She is now officially Queen Camilla. After the ceremony, which lasted in itself 2 hours, the new King and Queen returned to Buckingham Palace along that same ceremonial route, but this time there were hundreds of military figures, including ADF personnel in tow. They arrived at Buckingham Palace, where they were given a 7-gun salute, and after that the royals, both the new King and Queen as well as other senior working royals, Prince William, Princess Catherine, went out onto the balcony of Buckingham Palace. There was a large crowd beneath them, and they watched the balcony while the royals watched a royal flyover with the tricolours, the red, white and blue of the Union Jack painted in the sky. So it was 5 hours of spectacle. There were large crowds and there was lots of pomp and pageantry.
There certainly was a lot of pomp and pageantry. Now, I managed to spot Anthony Albanese, Australia's Prime Minister, in the crowd there going into Westminster Abbey. I also spotted Katy Perry. It was also an event for people watching, wasn't it? Who were some of the famous invitees?
There were 2,000 people there, so there were a lot of celebrities. I'll start with, I guess, the pop icons. So we had Katy Perry, as you mentioned. There was also Lionel Richie and an Australian, Nick Cave. Among the Australians, there was also Sam Kerr, who's now a footballer over here in the United Kingdom. She's also the captain of the Matildas. She led the Australian delegation, and as part of that delegation, as you mentioned, there was Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. There was also the Governor-General. There were world leaders. There was the French President Emmanuel Macron, there was the US First Lady Jill Biden, there was also the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and then there were the senior royals. Now, they were the last to enter Westminster Abbey. Prince Harry entered alongside his cousins. He was by himself. His wife Meghan remained in the United States. They sat in the 3rd row of Westminster Abbey. In the front row, there was Princess Kate, Prince William, and their two children. Of course, Prince George was taking part in ceremonial events, but Princess Charlotte and 5-year-old Prince Louis were in the front row, and they stole the attention. They were on their best behaviour, but there were a couple of yawns from Prince Louis that caught royal fans' eyes. They love to see the kids. They love to see them playing up, but they were on their best behaviour.
Yeah, they certainly were, weren't they? Now, the thing is, it happened in London, and London being London, the weather wasn't so great, of course. There was rain on the well-wishers lining the procession route, but royal watchers braved the elements to get a glimpse of the newly crowned king and queen.
Royal watchers had been camping out for days outside Buckingham Palace along the Mall, so they weren't going to miss this come rain, hail or shine. Usually when these events take place, and there have been a number of them over the last 12 months, we've had the Queen's Jubilee and then her death, so her funeral. And on these occasions, we've seen crowds with large Union Jack flags waving. Today, when you looked out across the crowd, there were umbrellas and ponchos. So people had come prepared for the weather and they weren't going anywhere. While the wet weather didn't dampen the crowd's spirits, however, it did cause the flyover to be scaled back. There weren't as many aircraft involved and it didn't go for as long as had been planned.
Now, away from the pomp and the ceremony, there were quite a few protests as well, and there was a huge police operation out in full force.
Yeah, that's right. Not everyone wanted to celebrate this event today, and there were a number of planned protests, the most significant of which was an anti-monarchy group known as Republic. They had planned a protest. It's been known about for months, and it was intended to be situated at Trafalgar Square. Now, there were several hundred protesters that lined the procession route, and as the King and Camilla came past in the royal coach, they were booing and shouting, "Not my king." However, before the day even kicked off, a number of those protesters those that had planned to protest were arrested. Now, police say that those arrests were made on suspicion of planning to make a public nuisance. However, the group has said that they were just getting placards out of a van. So there have been a number of arrests. There was a very high security presence, a lot of police on the streets, as you would expect with an event of this magnitude.
Now, Michelle, it's not just the one day, isn't it? This is a long coronation weekend. So what else is expected this weekend?
This is a 3-day extravaganza. So we've had the ceremonial part out of the way. Tomorrow here in the United Kingdom, so Sunday, it is the party. In the morning and during the day, members of the public here in the United Kingdom and across the Commonwealth are being encouraged to hold what's being known as the Big Lunch. That's public picnics. So there are thousands of public picnics planned here across the United Kingdom. And then later in the day, attention will turn to Windsor Castle, where a coronation concert is being held. Now, that will be headlined by Katy Perry and Lionel Richie, who we saw attended the coronation today. We're also expecting senior royals like Princess Kate and Prince William to attend the event.